back again. The day after the last one, I just want to kind of touch up on some things that I sort of slept on, slash like saw elsewhere. This is about Chainsaw Man. I'm gonna have a little note about the Oscars after, so I don't know, stick around if you care about that. So I wanted to clarify that, like, Fujimoto not going after a broader theme is fine. Like a type of philosophical exploration is completely fine. I don't think a story needs to do that. There's a lot of stories that are really good that don't really do that. And what makes Fujimoto's work kind of interesting is that he just writes these characters in a pretty, like, I'm not even gonna say necessarily in depth, but a complex way where, like, their interests, like likes, dislikes, habits, or whatever, kind of conflict with each other, or they're not like what you would expect to find in people sort of walking amongst us. And I think he does something pretty interesting because, like, the nature of people and how we operate is that if you write people with any sort of either complex motivation or have like multiple people do this with like conflicting motivations, you will always end up producing some form of like a philosophical idea, right? You might not be necessarily pro or against one. Kind of depends on your characters in the story and like whether they're sort of painted to be the protagonist or not, which Denji sort of is. And the idea that at least you want the guy to be better. Which is why, like, I think works that aren't even like, don't even try to hit it. Like there's kind of a running, like, you notice this sometimes with a lot of like sometimes slice of life writers, but also sometimes like the more generic sort of like isekai writers or whatnot, where they write like a story very devoid of like complex ideas or political thought, but they can't help but just through characters just like being think pieces to ideas that they may or may not believe in, sometimes develop one of sorts, and sometimes this is intentional, sometimes it's not. There's a lot of authors who have this sort of like self-insert behavior when like people were just clowning on like Fire Force for it because like the Tamaki or whatever went on like a rant about how like eroticism is hope or something like that, and like that was fine, but there was like a little kid in the story who was like just like went on a fucking 12-hit sentence combo about how like the person demeaning like the cat girl is like wrong. And it's clearly like the author like speaking to the audience or like a portion of the audience who says that sort of thing, and it's very embarrassing. But you'll notice this very subtly a lot of the times with like there'll be like a slice of life author, you know, main guy, main girl, or not, and then like there'll be like a conflict in the story, and then like the main guy's best friend who's supposed to be giving him advice goes on this sort of weird rant about how like people are alone in I can't even do it convincingly. It's always so corny when it happens, but it's like people are alone, and on occasion you will find the half a soul who makes you feel a little less alone, and you have to give everything you got to not let that slip through your fingers. And like the entire time he's like aura farming on a rooftop or some shit like that. It's like, what are we doing here? Like and it's said to be sort of like this like profound revelation for the main character or whatnot, but it's like that's not even like, even if it was true, which like it might not be, like sometimes it's not even like important to what's going on in the manga or whatever, and then that type of thing happens in more like not as good of like rom-com stories. It happens in shoujo manga just the same, by the way. Shoujo manga love having a character who's painted as like a good person, or like, and a statement doesn't mean they're not a good person, but a statement from a character that you'd want to emphasize or like listen to, and just love having them go on like a rant about how like what is worth valuing in yourself, especially as a girl. And they always love, and it's pretty normal, but they always love throwing in some random shit in there. It'll be like thinking you look beautiful and like being yourself and waking up at 9 o'clock to make eggs because eggs are good for you. And you're like, what the fuck? Like, where did that come from, man? This is the author getting a little quirky with it. But I forget where I was going with that. I completely got sidetracked. Self-insert characters in the manga, Fujimoto's manga. But that's where I think, yes, okay. And I was talking about that because that's how, like, even on accident, philosophical ideas get kind of tossed around in manga sometimes. And those are kind of bad examples. Fujimoto kind of does it the same, like the better way, where he doesn't really have a self-insert, but he has a lot of different people who interact in these very unusual spaces, and get some interesting ideas from that. Like just from how he wrote Makima, I mentioned how he doesn't really write about control, and he really doesn't. But he maybe not accidentally, but he kind of says stuff about control based on how certain characters react to Makima, either knowing control or not. And you can sort of glean a lot of like his opinions about it, like through that. For example, a lot of the people who end up really liking like Ride or Die for Makima are the ones who are most sort of lacking in their life. They're devoid of some sort of self-control and like other things like that. So like Denji's the obvious one. But like for example, like Aki and his name's Kishibe or whatever, the devil hunter who taught him how to fight, really wanted to like marry. I'm also gonna play it Quinxe. Quinxe? Rough. Like both of them understand. Both of those guys who are both have like a lot more self-discipline, but also like are public servants. Like, they both have the relationship with Makima where they don't necessarily trust or like her, but they understand that like she's sort of a necessary evil to make things sort of function. More so with Kishibe, Aki sort of is in the dark about her true identity, and it's possible he would have reacted a lot more negatively. But then it also kind of says something where like the people who hate Makima the most are like literal terrorists. Like it's literally like Santa Claus, like motherfuckers who are like, they don't like this hate control. They're just trying to do like evil shit. Like there's the only person who is like arguably good, who like outright hates / refuses Makima is like kind of Reze. But even then, Reze doesn't really like interact with her very much, and she's also like a foreign agent, so that also doesn't really matter very much. But that makes sense. Like even from that though, whereas like the entire sort of end of Reze's arc is how like she just essentially wants to be free and wants to be free with Denji. It's just that, and then like control literally stops her from doing that, which, you know, it's just interesting because like there's a lot of ideas going on there, like a lot of concept talk just from the nature of like how the world is built, but I don't really know if it's hard to tell how intentional that sort of thing is from Fujimoto, or if he's just writing good characters in a story that happened to build itself to have those characters really flourish in that space, right? Like, if all of Chainsaw Man's characters are in a world like, let's say, I don't know, we can even say like Eva, right? Like I think there's a lot less interesting stuff going on for Fujimoto, which is why he's not writing Eva, right? And I think he understands that. But it's hard to tell. I don't know the guy. All I know about him is what I glean through his works. I don't even listen to like interviews and such. So, you know, the Fujimoto in my head is just like a ball of biases and assumptions about him. The other things I want to mention are two other possibilities for what Pochita is. So there's three that I saw, and I kind of hate all three of them. So one is, and I forgot about this yesterday, but I've heard of it before, is that like one of the original ideas for the chainsaw was to help with the birthing process, which is fucking insane, but whatever. So a lot of people think he's the birthing devil. And so when he eats something, he is essentially unbirthing the concept. I think that's sort of the idea. I don't really understand then, though, what happens if he eats himself. Because it's not like... Again, like, so far from what we can tell, his powers don't change the past. So it's not like him eating himself is gonna like, he's not gonna like unbirth himself. He will technically still have existed all throughout the Chainsaw Man story, until that point. And then it's hard to tell what happens after. With that, it's not just like Denji getting fucking rocked. The other one I saw was... Which one more do you want to talk about first? Okay, I'll talk about the one I hate the most last. So the next one is like that Pochita is the devil. People have noticed, and this might be an English translation thing, that like Pochita never refers to himself, or like anyone in the know, like Makima, I don't think ever refers to him as the Chainsaw Devil. He's very often like called the Chainsaw Man. But people sort of think that he might be something like the Devil or something. I don't think that's the case. It'd be interesting, maybe, because if that's maybe his power is to create / destroy devils, but I don't know. We haven't seen enough to really say anything about that. I also don't really like that because then like, so it implies that if Pochita hates himself, he gets rid of all devils everywhere, which would fucking suck. I mean. Okay, so if the next chapter is the actual last chapter, that one is maybe the best to go on, because at least then Fujimoto can rock with like an epilogue sort of structure about like what Denji is doing with himself now. The problem is like if we see the immediate foreaction of that thought, it's just going to be kind of weird because like Denji really has nothing to do, especially in the sense that, like, Denji will have no powers, obviously, but, like, he doesn't have any sort of support structure. Like, no family. I don't even know if he's technically a legal government citizen. Maybe Makima got him a citizenship. I don't know. The government functions that kind of kept him afloat. Here and there, like the public service, like I always forget what they're called, the Devil Hunter, like organization or whatever. They're going to be gone. They no longer have a purpose if there's no devils to fight / kill. So I don't know. I don't really know what would happen to Denji other than like maybe they just show him like going to school or something. But I feel like that's a little anticlimactic. But what do I know? Pass this guy. I don't like driving behind people. Other thing, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I really like that one very much. Oh, the other thing about the birthing devil is that, like, if he's gone, a weird side effect is the bugs can no longer reproduce, but that doesn't really solve their problems. So, I don't know. And the last one I saw is that Puccietta might be the existence devil. So when he eats stuff, he just eats it out of existence. Again, I don't think this is very likely because we don't really see the other side of that ability, mate, where like he sort of makes things into existence. But I guess he's because like a chainsaw motorcycle is Assa's power, yours. Oh yeah, I don't know, and I don't really like that one. So, because my idea is like, okay, so if Puccietta eats himself there and he is the existence devil, it's possible he wipes out the concept of existence, which depending on how Fujimoto takes that is funky. It also kind of, in my opinion, lends itself to like an Evangelion ending, and I don't think that's work. I don't think that's what Fujimoto is going for, and I also don't think it works too well. So I don't know. I just want to touch on that shit. So yeah, overall, I think wrapping it up in one chapter after this is going to be difficult. I don't think it's going to be impossible. And it's not like, and I don't really care to see like every quote unquote loose plot line, and you know what I mean? Like, I want to see Denji meet the Blood Devil, not because I particularly like soy over like power, be like, oh, power, oh, or whatnot. I don't really give a fuck about that. I just think it'd be interesting to see how Denji's character sort of, I don't know if he's ever really coped with the idea that power's gone. And I think seeing the Blood Devil would sort of wake him up to that, but maybe not. I don't know. I thought that was just interesting. The other thing I want to touch on, last Chainsaw Man thing. So, okay, so I've seen this thing a lot where, like, I want to say it's Nayuta. God damn it, I'm just going to say Nayuta. It's Chainsaw, it's Makima 2. You know how it is. How, like, Denji's actions directly caused her to die. Where the idea was that if public safety, like, explicitly said, you know, if, like, Chainsaw Man turns into Chainsaw Man, Nayuta is gonna die. And so a lot of people are, in some extent, accurately pointing out how Denji was at fault for Nayuta's death, which kind of goes counter to what I was saying yesterday. And as such, I'm disagreeing. Not because, like, I think they're entirely wrong, but I think it's important to recognize that, like, so the actions of Denji changing into Chainsaw Man, like, right post apartment fire, is that technically, I forget his name all the time, Sideburns guy from the Chainsaw Man shirts, not the Sword Demon, the other one, learned that Nayuta was his family member, but he might have also just already known that. He seems to have, like, known quite a weird amount about Denji. He knew about all the dogs and stuff in the apartment. It'd be shocked to know that he doesn't know about the little girl he lives with. And so, like, the ones threatening about Chainsaw Man or Nayuta, pick one, was the public safety. But, like, the guy who killed Nayuta is not public safety. It was a guy whose explicit mission was to kill the people Chainsaw Man cared about until Black Chainsaw Man arrived and did stuff. Like, Denji changing into Chainsaw Man either way sort of, like, had not a lot to do with Nayuta dying. I don't know. Again, I feel like the death is sort of out of his hands. I think, like, I think what really is, like, Denji's actions that caused it is, like, Denji 1000% could have just, like, I think he could have saved her in a real, like, grab and go sort of way. Like he kind of got his ass kicked for a second, and then he had to be, like, carried out. And so Nayuta sort of left to fend for herself. But again, like, it's kind of Denji's fault in the sense that Denji's just sort of an idiot, but not really like a... I sort of am not convinced of the moral degree of it. It's like sort of like... Because there's kind of an allegory going of, like, how, like, Chainsaw Man is sort of like a drug for Denji. Like, he doesn't use it when his life is quote unquote going well, but he doesn't feel great. And the second his life is not going well, he pulls the cord, and now like shit feels fire. So it's like sort of an allegory to how like like people who are addicted to stuff often hurt those around them in like pursuit or in defense of that addiction. Which again, like I sort of see implements of, but I just don't know if I'm convinced that that's truly the messaging going on. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I don't know. I just don't think it's too convincing from me. Like, I'm not sure if the story has quite earned that a lot of the negative stuff happening to Denji is his fault. Or, because it's sort of punishing him in like a meta way, where it's like, okay, so another thing that like too is like when Nayuta's doing the sushi thing or whatever, and like she's dead, and they're like kind of looking for her, and Denji gets sort of sidetracked. He goes to the brothel that's burned down, and then goes to the sushi. Well, like, okay, Nayuta being dead there is supposed to be punishing for him in like a narrative sense, like, oh, she is dead because Denji got sidetracked. But in a real practical sense, she was already dead. Like, from the time Denji woke up in the hospital, like he was asleep for a week or whatever, like she was dead that whole time. Like, Denji could have never looked for her, and she still would have been dead, and it still would have been punishing. So like, it's sort of meta narrative punishing in that like it's not his direct actions, but like his bad actions as like not a morally good character sort of cause him to be in this sort of cycle of violence and depression. And so if it's more that like the bad things that happen to him, it's just, I don't know, I think it's interesting because it's a weird sort of showcase how like guilt and grief work, where it's like just like how Denji is not responsible for Aki's power or Reise's death. Like, it was all Makima. Other than Reise, who he didn't really know the outcome of, like, Denji felt like a shit ton of guilt over Aki and power. Even though he wasn't the cause of it. And the same thing, but you could argue that a lot of his sort of bad character flaw actions, like, it happened in the first half, also kind of lead into this, like, giving Makima, like, too much grief. But it's not like he could have done anything to Makima. I don't know. It's just this weird spot where, like, Denji's not a good guy, but he doesn't explicitly cause, like, harm to people. Not in the sense that, like, it's not like other manga where they show, like, the main character have, like, a giga fuck up, and that causes, like, a fucking, I forget what they're called, Myers-Briggs trap. That's the fucking personality type. You know what I'm talking about. Why can't I think of a name? Oscar Myers? Oscar Briggs? Fuck. Whatever. Oh, no, holy shit. I'm thinking of Ruth Goldberg. A Ruth Goldberg machine. where, like, the main protagonist will do something wrong, and it causes this, like, Ruth Goldberg machine to, like, kick off, that actually causes, like, an actual, like, devastating event. Denji, other than his existence being, like, coming into being, never has his, like, Ruth Goldberg machine. You know what I mean? He just kind of is, and just Makima is just kind of doing shit in the behind the scenes. And, like, this one, Death and the Chainsaw Man Church, which is also part of Death. Death is just kind of doing shit behind the scenes. But despite him not having a direct hand in it, Denji is still, like, a morally gray / bad actor, and he recognizes that, and so he still feels guilt over situations that really don't and, like, aren't from him. I don't know. I think it's interesting, and I think that sort of internal Denji conflict is where a lot of the story gets its meat. And this last thing I'll say about it is, last chapter, really hard to wrap stuff up. Could be done in a good way. I'm a big fan of the idea that, like, it's a meta ending where there's going to be an Act 3, but it's just going to be Denji because Chainsaw Man is gone. Big fan of that. I think it'd be pretty good as long as like Fujimoto's heart is in it, and and honestly, if he kind of slowed down a little, yeah, I'm on pace. We're fine. No, I'm gonna get past this guy. I don't know. I think it'd be satisfying, not to necessarily make Denji a good person, but I think he has some character arc left that he could be squeezed out of. I think, like, it's hard. Because, narratively, like, ever since Denji got Puchieta, pretty much since he got Puchieta, he's never really been down, right? He's always had someone in his life to kind of help keep him grounded. And that, like, it was Aki power, then it was Nayuda, then it's like Asa, Yoru. And in fairness, if Chainsaw Man actually does kill himself, Asa and Yoru will still be around. So he still kind of won't be like deep down bottom, but I don't know. I think, like, straight up, Denji needs to get his fucking kicks off so he can realize that sex ain't all that. Or realize, like, what he's truly looking for is, like, human connection more so than sex. And with then Chainsaw Man gone, I think he's in a better spot. So who knows? Maybe it happens in this next chapter. Like I said, I think there's a lot that can be still explored, but I wouldn't hate if last chapter is like a bit of a media outcome of Puchieta going, depending on what like Puchieta's got going on, and then like a bit of an epilogue where, like, unironically, I wouldn't hate like a Denji few years later type shit. Assuming this isn't like a Fire Punch prequel and like shit goes to hell for that reason, I guess. But I don't know. We'll see. Fujimoto's got a real crazy mind. But I like his work, and I trust him to deliver. He is yet to deliver in any of his actual manga, which, you know, not a lot of options, or his like short form like stories. So I think he'll deliver. Okay, well, there's Fire Punch. I almost took up all my time. What I want to say about the Oscars real quick, two quick things. One, this Timothée Chalamet ballet opera thing is so fucking blown out of proportion. He kind of said it maybe in a rude way, which I'm already on the, like, people can say shit in rude ways. I don't care. There are actual issues that are important versus, like, tone policing, how someone critiques something. But I generally agree with the sentiment where, like, because I fully agree with him in that, like, so it's not ballet or opera, but I love theater, plays type of deal. And with the exception of, like, real, like, standout hits like Hamilton, theater is also no longer mainstream. Like, most plays are not known to the layman, and a lot that are, especially like in the musical genre, are just because they have movies. There are a lot of people where, like, they know the icon, like the iconography, and they maybe have seen the movie, but have no idea what the fuck Phantom of the Opera is about. You know what I mean? And that's the most, like, mainstream example of, like, not knowledge or whatever. You start getting to some of these, like, random ass plays and shit. No one, like, it's unfortunately like a dying medium. It's an elitist medium. It is a medium that is only, like, tickets are fairly expensive. Like, in my hometown, there was a pretty cheap, like, theater where and like tickets were, like, still, like, I want to say like at the lowest $120, and this was like pre-2008, like around then. I think last time I went, there were like $200 for a ticket, which is fucking insane. If you like keep the math in mind, that's like 15 movies, which I understand the economic, like I know the logistical reason why it's that expensive, but that doesn't make it not hurt the pocketbook less. But also, like, theaters are not everywhere anymore. Like, a lot of old theaters got turned into movie theaters. Like, it's not, you can't just, like, go to a town and expect there to be, like, a theater playing a show around there. You have to, like, you would have to travel to, like, a bigger city in order to sort of get that sort of thing. So, I don't know. Which, like, theater was already sort of not dead, like, dying, not mainstream when I was born. And the older you are, I feel like you've noticed this more. But I love movie theaters. And movie theaters are starting to become the same thing. Like, theater such plays maybe a once a year, maybe 2 times a year sort of deal. Movies, on the other hand, were like a once a month sort of thing. Assuming you could afford it. Like, I really liked movies growing up, and so like a lot of my spare change allowance like went to going to the movies. Which were like very cheap. I wouldn't get like food or drinks. I would buy a ticket for like a matinee on like a Sunday, which was like $8. And depending on where you're at, it's still $8. Get that twisted. And then I would watch the movie, and that would be my one movie for like the month, and I loved it. But now, partially due to like a lot of factors, streaming services, COVID sort of fucking up the movie theater industry, and then not quite still rebounding or whatnot. Movies are now like a seasonal thing for me. Like 4 times a year, March, spring, fall, autumn. And part of that is because like cheap movie theaters only tend to play like one movie. I don't know if you guys have ever been to like a cheaper rural theater, but how a lot of them operate are like volunteer based, and it's just on the weekend, and they play one movie, and the ticket is like cheap. And then like the next week they play a different movie. So if you don't get it on that first week, you don't watch it in theaters. But a lot of bigger theaters are, instead of making prices cheaper, have decided to add more shit. The theaters are better. The chairs can lean back and all that jazz and da-da-da-da-da-da. It's like, okay, why is my ticket $23 and why is the water bottle like $7? It's way more expensive now, and like people don't talk about it, like, because there's also a saturation of movies, partially due to streaming services. Like, movies aren't as big of cultural events. Like the last movie that was a big cultural event was probably like Barbenheimer, and that's already been like 3 years ago. And I couldn't even, like, the one before that was probably Endgame, and that was like 3 years before that. Like, it's not even like a yearly thing anymore. There's like gaps and whatnot. So I don't know. So I do think movies are starting to become less mainstream, as in like we're entering a time now where you go, and this has all sort of always been the case, but like even like movies you would think would like sort of appeal to like, it's a little mean to say, but like the common denominator of people, like I don't know, something like a la like Naked Gun, I guess, which may or may not count, or like even like maybe like new Adam Sandler films. There's like a good chance these days, or like if you go up to someone and be like, hey, have you ever watched like I don't know, like Big Daddy or like Click or something, like the odds are probably like, yeah, you know, kind of depends. But like nowadays, like people just kind of happen to catch the movies they catch, and they also don't happen to be new ones a lot of the times. Like it's much easier than ever to watch old movies, but that sort of means that like when you're scrolling through Netflix or whatever, like a lot of people's watch hours now are dedicated to older movies, which is nothing inherently wrong with that, but it makes movies lack the same sort of cultural force, because like now when you go up to someone and be like, hey, did you see Sinners? Like there's like a strong chance like they say no, you know, which like racing aside. Anyway, I'm almost at work, so I'm gonna get this out of the way real quick. The only movie I've seen that's like really nominated for an Oscar is Sinners. I don't really care for Marty Supreme, and I plan on watching One Battle of Another. I just got to get around to it. Well, my medicine's done. Whoop. But so, I've been seeing a lot of this Best Actor shit going on, and I cannot believe that Michael B. Jordan is like really favored to win this award. Not in the sense that like I don't think he deserves it, because I do like him a lot, and I think Smoke and Stack are fine. I from what I've seen, I think people are sort of overplaying the like played twins sort of deal, because like in my eyes, like the characters are not like incredibly nuanced. They're sort of are just like, and then it's hard to say this without being like a little reductive, but it is like Smoke is the aggressive one, Stack is the analytical one, and it's literally like Alvin v. Theodore type of characterization. And there's obviously more nuance going on there, mainly because Smoke has like a lover who I think pulls out a different side of him in the movie, and like there's also like the brotherly love that's sort of different between them, which I think is good. I think it's interesting. I don't know how much like, I don't know, it's weird to say as not an actor, but I just don't know how much like an acting thing contributes to that. But I just think it's weird for Michael B. Jordan to win, because I just don't think he's the best actor in his own movie. I'm terrible with names, so I do apologize, but the person who identifies the I only know the names of Smoke and Stack, by the way, because they're that easy. Get that twisted as well. But Smoke's lover, the one who has the kid sort of with them, ghost kid, and like does the like identifies them as vampires. I think she's great in that movie. I think she's the best actor. And I also really like Sammy's performance. The actor who plays Sammy, I think he did a great job. Sammy was so much more of an interesting character to me. And I think he acted him great, versus like Smoke and Stack, which are like not bad, but again, I feel like they're almost caricatures of like a black gangster at the time. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but I don't really have a horse in this race. Ethan Hawke I love. I like Ethan Hawke in like almost everything he plays. I'm sure he's great in this movie. I don't know if he's better than Michael B. Jordan, and from what I've seen, I think Leo probably deserves the award, but I don't know. It's one of those things where if Michael B. Jordan wins, it kind of makes me look a little worse at all those other movies, but I guess I just have to see him to judge for myself. So I'm at work, so I gotta go. Thank you.